Well, according to my calculations, says right in front of me, you're now live. So I guess we're going live here, right? Hey, I'm glad to have you with me, Team Healthy. I noticed we already have quite a good number of people here that are already on board and talking to each other. I appreciate the way you encourage and support each other. Uh, this has become a phenomenon that we've got going on. It's we went free with this format about 5 weeks ago, and each week has been building and building. And I know that you all are gaining, I hope, some good information and encouragement through what we're doing here. So please know how thrilled I am that you let me be part of your journey with you. And for those of you who are new or have forgotten our format, what I do is I take questions throughout the week. And if you want to put questions underneath the video once it goes up, I'll get every single one of them. And we've received a whole lot of questions. So obviously I can't get to every one of them, but I'm going to try to pull some together and see what we have and try to make it as pertinent as possible. Um, this week, it struck me that there is a good deal of pain that many of you are struggling with, and I'm wanting to see if we can address this in the aftermath of having been with narcissists and all of the garbage they put onto you. Then you're left feeling like, yeah, I was the garbage dump, all right. And then the question is, what do you do? By the way, I wanted to let you know before I start with today's questions. Last week, I answered a question about that somebody sent in about a narcissist who never used that person's name. Of all of the questions that I received last week, that's the one that got the most comments and the most attention. Isn't that interesting? How many of you have lived with somebody, whether it's in your family or business or whatever, and they won't use your name? And that illustrates that you're not a person; you're a function to that individual. But I just thought I'd throw that out because it's such an interesting kind of phenomenon. All right, we have quite a bit here, so let me just dive right in. Um, this person is wanting to talk about the deception factor that goes into the interaction that the narcissist has with you. So here we go. It's this person says it seems that my ex always had to have some sort of deception going, mainly involving money, but there are other things too. He made me feel like it was a privilege for me to be allowed to receive his advice or even to be in his presence or to be allowed to have an opinion. Go figure. Who does that? My main question for Dr. C, though, is related to the seeming addiction to deception. Is it part of the entitlement issue or is it an entirely different issue? Addiction to deception. Actually, I've used terms like people have an addiction to their own anger and things of that nature. But yes, in fact, there are some writers that equate narcissism with addictive types of patterns. Let's keep in mind that narcissists are codependent. They do not think of themselves as that way at all. In fact, if anything, they'll say, "Oh, I'm highly independent." Well, no, you're not. These individuals they crave admiration, they crave the need for importance, they crave you doing their bidding. They must be in control because if they are, then you're going to live in ways according to their stipulations so that they can walk away feeling like they're the most important person in the room. And so they are needy, codependent individuals. So where does the question of deception come in? Well, it's in their vested interest to present their worldview in such a way that's self-serving. And so in this case, this narcissist was deceptive about money. And by the way, that tends to be a very strong theme with narcissists because money means that you're in the prestigious position, you're in the power position, you're in the control position. So that's extremely common. And so deception regarding money. And the fact that they would think, well, it's a privilege for you. And again, I just shake my head. It's a privilege for you to be able to know what I'm doing money wise. It's their way of saying I have to be in control, and I have to be the one that calls the final shots because you see, then that means I'm important, and that means that I have power. And that's what they're addicted to, the money. And then, as you mentioned, other things. That all is just the surface issue that brings it up to the top. But they're addicted to their own need for affirmation. And so deception tends to go hand in hand, rather than simply saying, we're all in this together, aren't we? Or I have needs too, and I have hurts and feelings. That they can't do that. They have to live behind the image that the false self requires of them, and their fears and their defenses. And so that's where deception and codependency comes in mind. By the way, keep in mind, part of the definition for addiction is that you have to have more and more of that which you're addicted to in order to be satisfied. And so narcissists, when they go into deception, it's like, well, I already weaved this story back here, a week ago or a month ago or 10 years ago. Well, now I have to just keep it up, and I have to maintain that mirage, or I have to maintain that image to the point to where they're self-deluded, they're self-decepted, or deceived. And so, yes, they go into it deeper and deeper, which is a part of the definition of addiction. But make no mistake, whenever they go into the hiding of money, it's all part of their codependency to keep you beholden to them, so that they can go away feeling important. And the more you're able to see that absurd reasoning that they have, the more I'm hoping you can think, you know what? I'm not playing into this. And I know that many of you have been tied to narcissists because of money issues, but it really does show the importance of you having as much independence as opposed to codependence, whether it's in money matters or lifestyle matters and all the rest. So, yes, that's an interesting question. Okay. I have two questions that I'm going to ask here, kind of side by side, because they have a similar theme. So bear with me on this one. The first question: how do you respond to people that you know in common with a narcissist in your life that shares a mistruth that was perpetuated by that narcissist? I run into to this, and the slander of it all is appalling. And so there's a person here who realizes the narcissist has basically run a smear campaign. What do I do with that? All right. And I want to go ahead and tag another question along, because it's a little bit more of a specific, very similar kind of question. This person says, I'm an invisible scapegoated child now in my 60s, so I'm not much of a child anymore. My mother is a covert narcissist. My sinister older sister is a covert narcissist. I went no contact with both of them 10 years ago. The pause on that. I find that to be terribly sad and tragic, that you'd have to say, my life is going to be better with my mother and my sister not in it. I mean, because, we have the ideal of family connections and all of that, but it doesn't always work out that way. And you don't have to apologize for the fact that it's there, but unfortunately, it's a byproduct of living with a narcissist. And so that's what this person did. Okay. Then she goes on to say, the problem is that both of them dirtbagged me to all of my cousins. Dirtbag. I wasn't extremely close to those cousins because we all grew up in different states, but nonetheless, it's hurtful that I essentially went no contact with them also, due to the false stories that my narcissistic family told them. And then she asked the question: one cousin reached out to ask what happened, and I've learned that you can't tell people that others are narcissists. So what do I say to the one nice cousin that reached out? So you have this one person that asks, there are a group of people that were told misinformation by the narcissist. You have another one that says, well, this is inside my family. I have a bunch of cousins that were given misinformation. How far do you go? And really, it's a matter of your own personal discernment as to how far you can and should go with these kind of situations. I'm one of these that stands for openness, and it's like I don't have a whole lot to hide. But then also, along with openness, you have to have that discernment what makes the most sense and what will gain, goodwill and what will not. And so it really comes down to a person by person, case by case basis as to how far you go in defending yourself. One of the things that I believe is that truth does have a way of rising to the surface over time. Surely, yeah, I'm looking at this first person. The narcissist ran a smear campaign with other individuals. Um, is there anyone in that person's sphere of influence that thinks, wait a minute, I know Jane over here and she's a decent person. And so if you're running a smear campaign, I bet there's more to it than that. Some won't go that far, but some will. And then the same thing with this woman who went no contact with her mother and sister, and then by default, a lot of cousins. Some will already know, well, I know what this aunt of mine or this cousin of mine, I know what they're like. And so if this person comes along and has a different story, that's not going to catch me off guard. I'd like to know. And so it's not as though 100% across the board, every single person that's heard the narcissistic propaganda is just going to buy into it. Now, having said that, there's this thing called flying monkeys, where narcissists bring people around who become basically yes people to them. And then also, there are many individuals who operate with what I refer to as psychological laziness. They have heard that you were slandered by the narcissist. They've heard that something went wrong between you and that narcissistic individual. And rather than thinking, I'd like to get to the bottom of this since this is my friend or this is my family member, a lot of people say, nah, I don't want to do that. I don't care. It's no big deal. It's not important to me. And so a lot of people operate with psychological awareness, or excuse me, laziness. And so if it's somebody that you feel is asking you or willing to talk with you on a little bit more specific and particular level, I'd go ahead and enter into it. Now you need to be careful about how you do it. You don't want to come off as the really bitter and soured kind of an individual, because I'm hoping, frankly, that you can remind yourself, I'm at peace when I'm away from that narcissist, and I'm a decent person. I have worth. I have dignity, and if the narcissist can't understand that, it doesn't take away the reality of it nonetheless. And I'm hoping that you can make that your foundation. And then as you're able to speak to these individuals who have been soured by the narcissist, let it be known. I know that I have had some differences with that narcissist. You've unfortunately been on the grapevine with whatever rumors are out there. I don't know that I need to go into details. Now, somebody you might, but with others, it's like, I don't know that I need to go into the details other than to say, I'm just going to appeal to the fact that I'm a decent person and there's a much, much larger backstory that, of course, that narcissist didn't seem to deem important to let you know. But I'm okay. I'm better off by not being in that person's sphere of influence. And it's not the words that you say that are going to leave the biggest impact. It's your demeanor that's going to leave the impact. You don't want to be haughty. You don't want to be highly defensive. You don't want to, just being condescending toward that narcissist. But you do want to be somebody that says, I'm in a peaceful place. And I hope that that there's much more going on here. And that it's good for you to be able to say that. But if somebody is going to have a more favorable reaction to you because of that, then I'd be willing to speak up. The bottom line is, here we have this second question I asked there. A woman who's been scapegoated and she's in her 60s. It's like, good grief. There are some people where this just doesn't end. And she's one of them. It's like, you'd think that by the time they hit 60, everybody would think, we've done this enough. Let's go back to decency. But they don't, because decency wasn't there to begin with. So, all right. Now, this next one, this next question is one of my gut-wrenching questions. This person says, Dr. C, I'm ashamed of how I handled my narcissistic mother. So here we have, we know that people will, be deceptive. We know that they'll run a smear campaign. So I want to take it to this next question. She's gone now, but I'm left feeling guilty and ashamed on how I handled situations and arguments. My anger got the best of me at times. I never laid a hand on her, but I did yell and I screamed at her. I didn't know what I know now after watching your videos. How do I forgive myself? And how do I forgive her? And I wanted to go ahead and tie that question into another question that was sent in. This person says, can you speak on the issue of reactive abuse? I can't stand the triggers and find myself hating myself for yelling and reacting. There is such a thing as what we refer to as reactive abuse. And it's not a technical term, but basically, if you yell at me, I yell back at you. If you have very inappropriate anger, well, you know what? I'm going to throw some inappropriate anger right back at you. And so we can get caught up in that point counterpoint. You feed off of me, I feed off of you pattern. And that is incredibly common when you're dealing with a strongly narcissistic person who just simply will not let up. They won't take their foot off the pedal. They just keep coming at you over and over and over. And one of the favorite games that narcissists have that they like to play with people like you is the game of gotcha. It's like they say insulting things, they are demeaning, they're rude, they're condescending and critical. And then you finally blow and say, quit it. I hate it when you do this to me. And then they come back and it's like, look at you. You're just pathetic, aren't you? And they can say, gotcha. That's what they do. And so let's keep in mind that these are manipulators. And some of them are very good at what they do. And they're looking for all sorts of ways to prove that they are the superior person. And so, even if in the midst of trying to prove their superiority, they come off with very inappropriate behaviors and attitudes and words and emotions, once you give them that negative reaction, it's like, see, someone has to be at the top of the stack here, and it sure isn't you. And they completely dismiss how they're the ones that's been putting all of the kerosene around the fire, and they throw the match on it. They fail to go into that space. It's a game that they have. And so, particularly to this first person, I'm ashamed of how I handled my relationship with my mother. I'm glad that you have a type of regret or guilt in the sense that you're saying to yourself, I don't want to be someone that yells at people. I don't want to be someone that screams. It's good for you to draw that conclusion. The rest of the story is you are in a grossly dysfunctional relationship, plain and simple. And if she is somebody that made her life goal to deride you and demean you and to condescend toward you, it would be weird for you not to have an emotional reaction. And on top of it, if you didn't have sophisticated teachings during your developmental years about how to manage your emotions and anger and conflict, it's only predictable that bad habits would have been put into your mannerism because, well, nobody taught you any differently. And so when you ask, how do you get over your own personal regret for your participation? How do you forgive yourself? You remind yourself that I did what I knew to do. And unfortunately, the skill set wasn't there as fully as I wish it could have been at that stage in my life, whether it was when you were 12 years old or 52 years old. Sometimes you're just going based on what you know to be based on the patterns that were given to you. The way you forgive yourself is you say, today, and I know this sounds, very commonplace, but I believe it down to the core of my being. Today's the first day for the rest of my life. And knowing that I am capable, based on past experiences, of going into a negative space, then I need to be on guard with that. I know that I have the capacity for anger. I know that I have the capacity for harshness. And I don't want those kind of ingredients to be central to my character. which is why I so commonly refer to my Dr. C, DRC stands for dignity, respect, and civility. I want to stand for that. And then not only theoretically do I want to stand for that, I want to ask in each day, in each segment of that day, what does it mean for me to be a dignified person? What does it mean for me to show respect toward myself and toward other individuals? What does it mean as I'm engaging with all sorts of people to act with civility? And if you can make your today count and your today be right and good, then that means that you're growing, and it means that you're moving on. And those negative experiences that narcissist brought into your domain are not defining features. They were roadblocks and they were stumbling blocks. But because of those, it forced you to say, I've got some work to do. And I like that. As a therapist, one of the biggest privileges that I had through all the years, 41 years of working with individuals, is taking people when they were at their down place. And it's such a privilege for me to know that there are individuals who are down, and I get to step in and say, "Well, tell me about it, and let's talk, and let's figure out what did and what did not go right, and let's you and me grow." And we do that, and we make it a joint process. I mean, it's so wonderful. So even if you look back on your past with that narcissist and you know that it didn't play out well on your side of the equation, the story is not finished. Okay, the story's not finished. You still get to continue writing your own script, and let's make sure that you're writing it in the good direction, and you stand for good character. One of the best ways to learn is through your mistakes. When my daughter was in the first grade, I was in the car with her, and she just looked at me and said, "Hey, Dad, I learned something here today." First grade, it's like, "What did you learn?" She said, "Well, the way you learn things is by making mistakes." And so apparently her teacher had said something, you learn by your mistakes. And I said, your teacher was really smart, and that's good. You learn by your mistakes. And so don't kick yourself for making mistakes. Instead, pick yourself up and say, I'm in a growth mode and no one's going to stop me. That's how you forgive yourself. Okay. All right. This next one's a gut wrencher. This person says, I cry day and night over very bad verbal and emotional abuse. Okay, let's just pause on that. We don't want to forget that these are real life people here. And we've got a community here. The reason you're here is because you have been hurt. And there are some individuals who just don't care. It just bothers me to know that it gets to you. I cry day and night over very bad verbal and emotional abuse. And then this person asked the question, do narcissists enjoy our pain? That's the question. Does a narcissist enjoy our pain? Now, I'm going to go ahead and say, in many cases, the answer is yes, they do. What kind of person makes that part of their approach toward life? It makes no sense, does it? And by the way, this falls in the direction of malignant narcissism, and you can be both covert or overt in your narcissism. But the malignant narcissist, one of the defining features is they're impervious to the pain that they generate in other individuals. In their mind, it's like, I won. Okay, you're over there, you're an emotional heap, and you're just struggling to try to get up. Good. That means that I'm the victor. That's how some of them think, and it's pretty twisted. And so I'm hoping that as you see that person who actually enjoys the fact that you struggle or that you're in pain, rather than thinking, what does this say about me? I think a deeper question is, what does this say about them? That person somewhere along the way so did not get the right direction and the right memo with respect to what life is about. Narcissism is defined as the absence of love. I made a video on that, a new way of defining narcissism, the absence of love. And then not caring about love, not knowing how to go into the space of love, then they become controlling and condescending and superior and defensive and alternate reality and entitled and all the many things that go with it. And so the way that you break through is you realize that person over there regrettably missed it completely. I want to be somebody that, in my own little small ways, can be someone that does have a standard of love. And so that's as you try to figure out how to break through some of the pain that they generate. I know that you may feel defeated and disabled, but there's always someone in your world, whether it's the person at the grocery store or the person you live with or someone you work next to, who would actually appreciate kind words from you and goodness. And that's how you run counter to their pain inducing mannerisms. All right. And when I say I want you to be on team healthy with me, this is what we're talking about right now. Okay. All right. This leads directly into the next question. Do narcissists consider a true and unconditional form of love as weakness? In other words, all where you show love and empathy is for them, the signal that you are a weak person. Oh boy, yes, narcissists consider unconditional love, empathy, kindness, tenderness, gentleness. It's like, nah, I don't want to do that wimpy kind of stuff. Long ago, before I did YouTube and all the rest, as soon as the internet came on, I had an email list where I wrote a bunch of articles, and we had a couple of thousand people that I'd write an article to every single week, and one of them was entitled "Gentleness is Strength." And I'm telling you what, that is a message that's completely lost on narcissists. They're into power. They're into condescension. They're into being the ultimate authority. Authoritarianism. I'm going to be having some videos coming up on authoritarianism and the narcissist hunger for power, those kind of things in the next weeks. Ultimately, the ultimate power is love. And they consider that to be weak. And I consider that to be pitiable, that they can't see beyond the futility of that. I have a father who's not quite 93, and he's not doing really well right now. He's struggling physically. But one of the things that's so interesting in my many interactions with him now is he's talking in a reflective way about the meaning of his life and my life and our relationship. And I really like going into that space. When you're towards the end of your life, the thing that makes you reflect in a gratifying way is to say, I loved well. If narcissists want to say, well, that means you're a weakling, you know what my response to that is? You can have whatever opinion you want, Mr. and Mrs. Narcissist. I'm standing on that. And as I age and I become that 92 or 93-year-old man, I hope that I can say I loved well. And call me weak. You can call me Joe, call me whatever. The old saying, just make sure you call me for supper. But yeah, they see it as weakness, and all it proves is they don't get it. I hope that you get it, and I hope that you'll be more than happy to be the kind of person that says, watch how it works. Okay, then the next question, and I told you I had some gut wrenchers here today. This person says, why don't they think about the pain that they inflict? How can someone be so inclined that way for their entire life? How can cruelty sit so comfortably with them? I can't comprehend this. It is incomprehensible, isn't it? I tell people so often when they're trying to make sense of narcissists, you're trying to take normal, healthy reasoning and apply it to abnormal, unhealthy people. And sometimes there's just not much overlap there, is there? sometimes you just look at them and it's like, do you really think this is a good way to go? And in their answer, basically, as illustrated by their lifestyle choices and priorities, it's like, yeah, I think, being this way is okay. Then I need to move on with somebody. But how can they do it? Again, I go back and say it's the absence of love. And so somewhere along the way, emotional connectedness seemed to be elusive to them, or being at the top of the stack competitively seemed to be the ultimate goal. The messages that they received regarding what a healthy life consists of were grossly distorted in the wrong direction of dominance and control and being overbearing. That's what you're dealing with when you deal with a narcissist. And so when you think, why are they doing this to me? Well, you happen to be the player on the stage. But then the real question is, why are they doing this? End of question. They're doing it because they don't know the meaning of love. Experientially, it was not brought to them in a very full way. And then why are they doing that to me? The to me part is because you happen to be there in front of them. And so it's sad and it's pitiable. Another aside. I'm talking about family stuff here today. My twin brother, Lee, I know I did a video with him a while back. It's a forensic psychologist. And he deals a lot with the courts and attorneys when there are sexual abuse cases and murders and things like that. And I tell him all the time, Lee, I can't imagine why, how you can do that and maintain your sanity. Of course, the question is, well, who says he's sane? What he'll say is, about 95% of the time when I have some of these cases and I start picking up on all of their background themes, it's like a very high percentage of these people didn't even stand a chance by the time they hit their teenage years because the themes were so dark and negative and harsh, and the disconnect was very strong that that absence of love just became part of what they were. And so let's remind ourselves that these are people who, do they have choice? Well, we all have choices. We know right from wrong. But then also, there are some elements that are just so built in that it just becomes part of what they are. Okay, a few more questions. I know we're getting low on time here, but another question: is spiritual abuse common with narcissistic parents? And I get questions about religion fairly often. There are multiple themes that that narcissists are drawn towards: power, money, prestige, and religion. Interestingly, can fit into that in the sense that with many individuals, they think, well, the ultimate power source, the ultimate authoritarian source, is God. And so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that space. And I'm going to align myself and let anybody that wants to know that I am the spokesperson on behalf of not just me, but God. So it's kind of like a little kid that's hiding behind mom's skirts. But there are individuals who have this craving for control and this craving to be better than. And what better cover than to say, well, it's not me that wants to be in control. I'm just speaking on behalf of God. Can't argue with God now, can you? And it's to me, it's chicken. It's like, come on, guys. The major religions of the world. I'm Christian, and whether it's Judaism or other religions, they focus on love. Not and some folks, they focus on authoritarianism. But yeah, do narcissistic or is spiritual abuse common among narcissistic persons? It's like, yeah, if I can take that club and use it, sure, I'm glad to do that. So that's kind of quite common. And then another question: if a mother and father are narcissists, will the son be also? Well, there's no guarantee that if you had a mother or father who were very narcissistic, that you have to be that way. Although I'll say that the odds are not really stacked in your favor. Um, I'm going to mention something that I've mentioned before, that about 50% of your temperament type or your personality type is kind of embedded in you. It's generically or inherited. And this goes back to twin studies and sibling studies and things like that. Actually, research shows that about 40 to 60% of your temperament type is kind of inborn. And I won't get too deep into all of that because I don't have time. But that means that, and I just call it 50%. So some of what you are is just what you are. And then others, it's because of environmental influences. So if your mother and father were narcissistic, might you also be inclined to be a narcissistic? It's like, yeah, there's probably something in your predisposition that's going to lead you that direction a bit more so than other individuals, but you still have that other percentage that you can work with. And that's the other influences besides them. And if you can sociologically, and this is an Eric Fromm kind of thinking, he's one of my heroes in the annals of psychology. Eric Fromm says that so much of what you are is also determined by the sociological surroundings that you're in. And so if you can get yourself around people who do enforce positive reinforcement and good ingredients and goodness and kindness and helpfulness and humility, then you can actually move beyond what mother and dad may have predisposed in you. So just know that. Okay, and then the last question I'm going to go with. Does a narcissist have to constantly be around people for attention? Are they the types who are constantly in some new group or club and can't really be alone, or they start saying that they're depressed? And that question has a bit of an all or nothing kind of a sense to it. Many narcissists narcissists look for narcissistic supply. They're looking for someone who's going to say, yeah, you're the best. You're terrific. And so, yes, many narcissists look for groups who are going to reinforce their narrative of them being superior. Sometimes, though, particularly when you're more of the covert or especially in the vulnerable narcissist angle, it may be that you don't really seek out groups because it's like, I don't want to be around them anyway. But nonetheless, narcissists by definition are offended when somebody doesn't say, yes, you really are the most significant person. Yes, you really are super significant. And so do they need to be around people for attention? They don't necessarily go and seek it out, but at the same time, whenever they're around people, they want it to be understood. I'm the most important person here. So that is a deep need. It's a driving force for them. Okay. I know that many of you are going to have questions. Go ahead and put them below. And by the way, let us know where you're from. I know some of you have already done that. I just so appreciate knowing that we have people literally from across the globe. And you people from Australia who are watching us at 3:00 in the morning, go get them. I'm glad you're with us. And we have people that are watching us live at that time. They're the night owls. I can promise you I'm asleep at that time. And so leave your questions, and I look forward to seeing what we're going to have next week. And you're going to drive this, and just know that I so deeply appreciate you allowing me to be a part of your journey. And by the way, look up our little bookstore clip underneath or tab underneath the videos. We've got that fixed, and we've got my DRC coffee mugs. I think we have some Team Healthy stuff on there too. And if you need some memorabilia like that, just do it. And I'm glad you can have the access to that. All right, guys, thank you so much for your participation. So many comments there and so much encouragement that you offer to one another. We really are a community here, and I want us to hold each other up in goodness and decency. And all that having been said, I shall see you same time, same station next week. And if you all are watching on videotape, shows my age, on tape delay, just know that we're going to have this up and you can watch us anytime you need to. See you next time, and I look forward to hearing from you. Bye now.